It's the Italian 90 thing all over again. I don't mean going to Pittodrie on a Wednesday night in October is the same as watching the World Cup, even on your television during the summer. But Italian 90, I was 20 turning 21. I'd already been to Wembley a couple of times following Scotland, like the rite of passage of the working class Scottish male. When I was 14 years old, I went down with my dad. When I was like 18, 19, I went down with my mate. We did the overnight bus thing, leaving for Buchanan Street, and the overnight bus back up, kind of 48 hours with no sleep, a lot of drink, and getting beat 1-0 by a Peter Beardsley goal, standing in the old terrace at Wembley. I've been at a couple of Scotland England games at Hampden, just grew up in that general thing of everything about England was wrong. They had to get beat all the time. Eric Bristol was Satan, Jockey Wilson was God. Even I'd watched the only time I watched rugby was to watch Scotland hopefully beating England in the old was it 4 Nations back then? 5 Nations with 4? I can't remember. But the rugby, even then I would watch that so to see Scotland beating England, and I'd already kind of fallen in love, a real admiration that's lasted my whole life for what was then the West German national team and the Bundesliga. It was pretty exotic as well back then because you didn't get the same amount of football, foreign football on television. You get virtually no football on television when I was a young man. But Italian 90, I'm watching the World Cup semi-final, the famous semi-final between England and Germany in Turin, live on the telly. Mum and Dad's sitting in the living room, and of course when Paul Parker deflects in the free kick and Germany take the lead, my dad's out his chair cheering, yes, and I didn't. I was kind of just didn't feel myself. And what it was that the previous few days I'd started thinking this thing had just come into my head. This was the rubric, this was the metric by which I was judging this game. It wasn't tribalism. It was I don't know where it comes from, but if England had won that semi-final and won that World Cup, and it was all about, I suddenly realised with England getting so close to the prospect of winning the World Cup in my lifetime. England didn't qualify for World Cups when I was a kid. Here they were, actually in a semi-final. If England win this, that'll mean that Europe is only 3 European countries. France and Spain hadn't won the World Cup yet at that point in time. So Italy had won it 3 times. West Germany had won it twice, because although they went on to win Italian 90, Germany at that point in time had won the World Cup in 54 and 74, and that was it. They won European Championships, but that was them in the World Cup. So they'd won it twice, and this would mean England would add the 1990 World Cup to the 1966 World Cup. So Europe would have a team that won it 3 times and 2 other teams that won it twice each. At that time, South America, Brazil had won the World Cup 3 times. Uruguay had won it twice. Argentina had won it twice, and I thought this would be perfect. That's it. That's all the countries that won the World Cup. It would all be completely even, completely split. Down the middle. I don't know why. I just feel as if there has to be an integrity to the competitions to make the competitions worth winning. And I don't mean for a second that I want to see Aberdeen finishing second, but I find myself, if we finish first, if we win the league this season, still got a great chance of doing that. It's really early doors, and Aberdeen finish second. We'd experience what Celtic fans are enjoying the prospect of right now. They win the league, and Rangers don't even finish. The other half of the Old Firm don't even finish second. That would be great, but I could then enjoy this thing that's in my head that if Aberdeen continue in this vein, and actually finish second, they'll qualify for the Champions League, the old European Cup, the qualifying rounds they'll get into, but that's what we're trying to, the top 2 places get into the Champions League qualifying rounds next season. And that would mean Aberdeen were then playing in the European Cup, if you like, the top club tournament in the continent for the 4th time in their history, to match the 4 times that they've been champions of Scotland. Because when Aberdeen won the league for the first time in 1954-55 season, the following season, they were champions of Scotland the very first season of the European Cup, the following season, 55-56, but as the norm is in Britain, we were sceptical. We thought, what's this foreign stuff? It wasn't just like an island nation being scared of anything foreign. We hadn't it's snobbery. Still thought we were the best football nation in the world in the 50s. The best football islands in the world, if you like. We'd invented the game and all that kind of nonsense. We didn't take part in the first World Cup. We didn't take part in the first European Championships. And in 1955, Chelsea were the champions of England. They were told by the league, don't be taking part in this newfangled European Cup, foreign muck. Don't be getting involved in that. England didn't send a club to take part in the first. There was only 16 teams took part in the first European Cup. And only, I think, 7 of them were actually champions of their country because it was almost invitational. Let's just get clubs in. So Hibs took Aberdeen's place. Harry Swan was a bit of a kind of actor-manager type, quite theatrical, the owner of Hibs at that time. Hibs had won the league in 51 and 52 and in the late 40s as well. That's Aberdeen, Hibs and Hearts are all joint in third place for overall Scottish titles. Old Firm, both sides of the Old Firm in the 50s. And, I mean, they've won 50 odd titles each, both halves of the Old Firm, and Aberdeen, Hibs and Hearts have all won it 4 times each. That's how much this country is dominated by the Old Firm, this country's football. And it meant that Hibs, even though they had never won the league, they wouldn't win the league after, it was 1952, I think, the last time Hibs won the league. So they've never been champions of Scotland since then. So they were never champions of Scotland at a time when the European Cup was a thing, because the European Cup didn't start until 1955. It meant they got into the European Cup. Now, Motherwell, when was it? In fact, it was us. It was us getting demoted at the end of 2011-2012. We'd finished in the second Champions League slot. Motherwell finished third, so they get bumped up in the following season. They took part in the European Cup, or the Champions League qualifiers as it was. Was it Panathinaikos, I think, did them home and away, the 1971 losing finalists in the European Cup. So it's quite a big game for them, quite a symbolic. And that was Motherwell's due reward, because the only time Motherwell being champions of Scotland was in 1932, well before the European club competition as we know it was invented. So they've had a go in it as well. And it's almost like, Aberdeen would, because they didn't get to take part the first time they won the league, even though they should have been, it's quite right, almost in a way that they get to take part in the European Cup at Champions League as it is now, whatever stage of it, 4 times in the history after winning 4 times, being champions of Scotland 4 times in the era of European club competition. With Chelsea, they didn't take. I thought Chelsea was fascinating because they were formed in 1905, Chelsea. And then they won the league in 1955. They didn't win it again, didn't become champions of England again until 2005. And then they retained it 2006 and I lost interest. But it's quite interesting. So it means that there's only 11 teams have been champions of Scotland, 11 clubs, have been champions of Scotland. And that would mean that the only 2 who've been champions of Scotland who never got to take part in the European Cup, because Dundee won it and they got to the semi-finals of the European Cup in 62-63 after winning the league in 62, and Dundee United also lost to an Italian team in the semi-finals of the European Cup in 1983-84 after finishing champions of Scotland the one time they won it. Kilmarnock got put out by Real Madrid, the great Real Madrid team in the 60s, when they won the league in 1965. So you would only really have Dumbarton, who shared the first ever league title with us and then won the second one outright, but that was in your 1890s. And Third Lanark was it 1902, 1904? So I think Hibs won it in 1903. So Hibs, yeah. And the Jambos won it in the late 50s and I think 1960. So they've played in the European Cup as well. So that's the kind of thing I'm thinking about Aberdeen. How you doing, folks? This is your Fatek. Rangers are reversing the roles. Rangers and Aberdeen are reversing the roles of our September 1985 league clash, reversing the venues as well. Preview pod coming to you in association with Gersnet. Check out Gersnet. I forgot to mention, I didn't know who was in the Gersnet pod on Friday night. It's a really good pod. It's John and Grant. They were doing a review of the FCSB victory and looking ahead to the game against Mirren, which we won by 2-1, and I got the names wrong on that when I was promoting that the other night. My information was wrong. It was hosted by Scott Bradley, doing a great job in the host's chair, and Stuart Weir and Chris Jack were the guests then. So a proper pod that was talking about Robin Proper. Get on that and watch that. Plenty of time to get them watched before we get into the Aberdeen build-up stuff. Although, of course, the boys on Sunday night were talking about the Aberdeen build-up. I am sponsored by Gersnet and also sponsored by the Junkers family, who invented all the bombers, funded all those bombers and transport planes during the Second World War. I was talking about them in the pod on Sunday night, and somebody got in touch. Aldo, thanks Aldo, he got in touch to tell us how much he enjoyed the pod, but also to point out that I'd said Heinkel 88 when of course it was young. I was talking about Second World War. I was sponsored by Second World War tanks on Sunday. The night I'm sponsored by Second World War planes, a very particular family, the Junkers family. I mean, they're named after the planes, what kind of named it? Anyway, Junkers 88, it's Assad Heinkel 88, it's the HE 111. I get my kind of light bombers, heavy fighters mixed up. But iconic plane of the Second World War, iconic fighting plane, the old Junkers 88. And I think the reason Aldo that I dropped the Junkers 88, I just had to kind of get it wrong, make it a Heinkel 88. It's the 88, isn't it? It's the 88, 1888. You know, Celtic won the double, of course, in 1988. Just end 88. No, the 88 is what's worn by Nazis in America. They were the 88. It's in an episode of what's that programme called with the woman's, she's into jazz, but she's also goes undercover in Iran and stuff like that. Oh, I can't remember what it's called. But she's in a bar once, and the guy's got 88 tattooed, and a shamrock. And the 88 is like, because it's the 8th letter of the alphabet is H, you know, and 88 and the tattoo means Heil Hitler. You know, so the Nazis, actual modern day Nazis, wear the 88. Because I've got other reasons for not liking the name 88. It got me confused. And then there's £88 million turnover, so it's all good now. £88 million turnover, absolutely tremendous. Rangers just going upwards, going forward. A great announcement by sweet baby James Taylor today. We're free of litigation. We are free of litigation. That's just something you should be. You know, it's maybe not a boast, but it's nice to know you just should be free of litigation, and we are finally. So go to hell, Hummel, whatever. But £17 million loss. That's loose change to us. We've got money coming in all roads. We're absolutely phenomenal. The Champions League money will cover that. Oh no, Aberdeen's going to get that. Oh right. And I think that wee announcement, the wee video today put out there by player trading model. Player trading model, I think, still getting used heavy, still getting hit heavy, the player trading model phrase throughout that little video from sweet baby James Taylor. But it's slowly segueing in circle of virtue, circle of virtue, a lot of circle of virtue signalling. It looked like he was sitting in the circle of virtue. I don't know anything about the financial stuff. All you've got to do is have James Taylor sitting there talking to us in a nice lounge that's kind of uplit at the back, and I'm thinking, is that the back of the Govan there? I wonder if that's maybe one of the lounges you get in the main stand. It looks really smart. That's quite, and that's me totally distracted. Then they would throw in, footage of us beating Ross County at Hampden. That's me. Oh, who's that putting that cross in there? Oh, I wonder if my Tondo's going to be fit again soon. So that was completely distracting to me. But you're welcome. You're welcome, James. He was thanking the fans for our patience in getting the overrun, the delays to the work that needed done in the Copland. So thanks very much. Your experts out there will be sorting out, the actual experts. I'm not doing the sarcastic thing about Celtic fans, telling us what our accounts are really all about. It sounded kind of, a bit worrying, but 88, that's it, £88 million turnover. I think that's a record for Rangers, so we're keeping up with inflation or something in that sense. But it'll all get a lot better if we can actually win the league, and certainly if we can get into the Champions League, and that's been pretty much threatened by Jimmy Tellin's Aberdeen's amazing start to the season. That's not our fault. I don't know. This has been thrown in as a criticism. I did it myself a few weeks ago. We lost to Kilmarnock, and if we're going to finish third, there's no way Philippe Clement can survive Rangers finishing third or dropping into third. Well, we dropped into third. We were already third. It was, if we go to Aberdeen, we go 9 points behind. It's going to be third. But a couple of days to calm down. I thought, well, it's not really our fault. We've literally not had a chance to do anything about it until tomorrow night or tonight, most likely, by the time you see this preview pod against Aberdeen at Pittodrie. It's the first time we've played them this season. The only time we've had a chance to directly do anything to stop Aberdeen. It's not our fault if they've been utterly exceptional. Of course, a lot of Rangers fans just now will construe it as somehow being our fault that we didn't go in and get Jimmy Tellin, or it shows up the fact that Philippe Clement has to hit the ground running in the same way Jimmy Tellin has. I don't really go along with that. I don't go along with that at all, to be honest. I think the Rangers' job is a lot different. And apart from anything else, we're in Europe. We are in Europe, and that's something that's we're kind of going under the radar just now. A lot of criticism from our own fans. As I say, European football is maybe what killed Barry Robson's management career, or his career at Aberdeen as manager last season. It certainly did for Stephen Naismith this season. Just our luck to get Kilmarnock and then St Mirren as they're slowly recovering from the little sojourns in European football this season, which knocked them right out of kilter. Derek McInnes doing a fantastic job at Kilmarnock for a few years now, and Stephen Robinson doing the same thing at St Mirren. But European football really has, knocked their domestic form to they're down the bottom end of the league, as were Hearts, and I think that maybe should put into perspective for us why Aberdeen are doing so well. And they've got a great manager there, and it's a coup for him, but not even Aberdeen could have expected him to be doing as well as he's doing just now. And it should also let us maybe appreciate what we're doing. That's on Sunday there. That was Rangers winning their fifth domestic match following a midweek European game. That's something else. Remember, Giovanni Van Bronckhorst even were getting us to the Europa League final. It basically cost us the league in terms of either side of the Dortmund game. After the first leg, probably the greatest performance from Rangers I've ever seen in my life, pound for pound, away to Dortmund in the Westfalen. We were at home to Motherwell, 2-0 up at half time, end up drawing 2 each, 2 points dropped straight away. And I think after the second leg, Ibrox, an absolute epic of a game. We got to Tannadice, and although we should have had at least one penalty, we ended up drawing that game as well, dropping another 2 points, and that was really bad. That really cost us in terms of retaining a league title then, and putting ourselves straight into the Champions League the following season. Real knock-on effect from that. So I don't think we should be sniffing or missing out in the fact. I think a lot of the criticism of our performances against like St Johnstone, Motherwell at Hampden, and certainly on Saturday, St Johnstone in the league, and certainly against St Mirren on Sunday there, they've all been they've really kind of missed out the fact it's following a European match, particularly when we're into the Thursday games after we get put out by Dinamo Kiev in the Champions League qualifiers. It's been 3 Thursday games in the Europa League group stage, and we've followed them up with domestic wins. Not spectacular, not particularly convincing, a lot of problems still to be seen there, but this is something that every Rangers team, no matter how well they do throughout the season domestically, eventually has always struggled after, at some point or another, they've struggled after European games. It's a difficult thing to muster and to master, and Aberdeen don't have that problem this season. This is going to be the 10th league fixture for both clubs, for Rangers and Aberdeen at Pittodrie tonight, let's just call it. So we're really getting towards the end. There's only one more round of fixtures in the first phase of the SPFL Premiership. I think Dundee, we played Dundee in the League Cup, but I don't think we've played them in the league, although I think it's Hearts we play again in the league next. But Aberdeen, same thing, they have won 9 games and drawn 1. Sorry, they've won 8 previous games, they've drawn 1. You want to go test conditions, you want the perfect litmus test, the test conditions of us both going to Parkhead. Rangers and Aberdeen have both gone to Parkhead this season in the league on a Saturday and have both been 2-0 down at half time. We drew. I wish we drew. Aberdeen drew 2 each. We beat 3-0 in the end up. So they look a lot better than us. I think there's a lot of talk about the bookies having us as favourites tonight in this game tonight. It's Aberdeen. Aberdeen are the form team. Aberdeen are all guns blazing. They've got that esprit de corps as well. They've got that momentum. We're just ticking along under the radar at best, but we get no credit for beating FCSB 4-0. Their best player was suspended. They rested a lot of other players. Their remaining leagues not up too much. They hadn't lost their 5 previous away games in Europe that they've played this season coming through the qualifiers against decent opposition. They were on a 10-game unbeaten run in Europe and the domestic situation in Romania. So I don't think we should be writing off how well Rangers did. But I actually like the fact that it's been written off, because I feel this is, as I mentioned at the beginning of the pod, or halfway through my massively verbose introduction. That's what you get with these pods. I'm sorry, there's no production values whatsoever. The direction is even worse, but it all comes from the heart. The 1985-86, I was just a boy. Again, talking about me being just a boy, that's all I can offer you. All my years of watching Rangers, and we were playing Aberdeen at Ibrox. I thought it was the first time we lost that season. It was Jock Wallace's second coming, and we got off to a really good start in the league. And Rangers, as Aberdeen have been of late, for far longer than us back in 85, 86. Mind you, we hadn't won the league since 1978, and we'd been pretty dire. After 1979, where we just lost the league at the last moment, we were pretty dire and were struggling to finish third, sometimes fourth. It was beyond us. St Mirren were finishing above us at points, so it was pretty awful. But here was Rangers. Joe Wallace's first full season back in charge, and his second stint, and we were playing Aberdeen at Ibrox, and we had a lot of parallels with Aberdeen's run just now. We had beaten Dundee United by a goal to nil at home, as Aberdeen did the other night. We'd beaten Parkhead and drawn, as Aberdeen have done already this season. I think there was another game in there. I didn't realise we'd actually lost to Dundee the previous week until I looked this up today. We lost to Dundee the previous week, and it was into September, wasn't it? We were running into the end of October as we are now. But we had a comeback win over Hearts. That was the other thing. I was at that game. I remember I was at all these games back in the mid-80s. I was going to see Rangers home and away. It was a lot easier to manage on a paper round, and then as an apprentice, then it was an apprentice as a dog's body in a travel agent's, a UK-wide travel agent's head office. It's a lot easier to afford it all going home and away those days than it wasn't a full-time proper job in later life. But we beat Hearts 3-1. I think Hearts had been 1-0 up. Hearts, who would eventually finish second to Celtic on the last day of the season, calamity against Dundee at Dens Park. But they were 1-0 up against us, and we beat them 3-1 to keep this run going. I remember going to Easter Road, and we took the gates off the hinges. The Rangers support travelling through Easter Road, it was so big that Easter Road couldn't cope with us, and they tried to shut the away end, and the Bears just lifted the exit gate, lifted it off its runners, and in we went. It was totally choked, and we won through Easter Road, and we were playing the Jambos. They were 1-0 up, and we come back to win 3-1, and Ali McCoist and Sandy Clark get sent off for fighting. Ali McCoist punching Sandy Clark. I wonder how that went down with Nicky Clark when he was playing for Ali in the lower leagues, but it was a bit of momentum. There was a bit. I think maybe there was 30,000 at Ibrox that day, because people in the know, people who'd been watching football for a while, weren't fooled by what was going on here. But Aberdeen had been the league champions, and they were the reigning league champions. They'd been the league champions the season before that as well. They were going for 3 in a row, 3 titles in the trot. When they came to Ibrox that day, I was up the back row of the Copeland. Maybe my wee pal was up the back row of the Copeland. I'm like 16 at the time. And I think there was a thing about, I'm sure there was a rumour, I don't know if it was just wee boys talking nonsense in the train on the way up for a Drawson, or it had actually been an announcement by Rangers that there was going to be paratroopers. This thing that we do in the game Need Us Remembering Sunday, where the guys abseiling off the roof, and it was supposed to happen that day, but it didn't. And I'm up the Copeland, and I'm thinking somebody's going to come down the front of the Copeland onto the park. But the only people kind of leaving some of the architecture of Ibrox that day and ending up on the pitch was the east enclosure, as we quickly went 2-0 down to Aberdeen. I think Craig Patterson gets sent off. Did Hugh Burns get sent off as well? A couple of sendings off anyway, and we didn't take it well. There was coins going on the park, and then the punters are on the park. I think the police were wading into the east enclosure. It was interesting, and I think Aberdeen wrapped it up in the second half. They won 3-0, and it was just bang. That was it. Back down to earth. This was the usual in those days, and I am hoping it's a nice wee reversal of all that, because in the intervening 40 years, we certainly get plenty of revenge on Aberdeen. But it's because it's my formative years. When I was 10, Aberdeen won the league. The first Scottish Cup finals I went to, 1980, Aberdeen won the league. I was just 10, I was about to turn 11. And I remember watching the telly as they were all celebrating at Easter Road. Quite an amazing thing, as it was then. And then in 1982, I went to my first Scottish Cup final, we get beat off Aberdeen. 1983, I went to my second Scottish Cup final, we get beat off Aberdeen. Aberdeen won the league in 1984, 1985, when I was like 15, 16 years old. This was just what I grew up. It was a formative years. We won once at Pittodrie in 12 years in that period. I always felt as if I was really jealous, because you're a young kid. You don't have that thing yet of, I don't really, you always care how your football team gets on, but it's like, I would rather be supporting Rangers when they're in the bottom tier than supporting anybody else, that are winning the top tier and getting into the Champions League. You don't have that kind of thing about you yet when you're a kid. You just know that you support Rangers and you love Rangers. But I was really jealous of Aberdeen. They always seem to have more modern kits than us. as well. The kids always seem to be a bit fan. The Adidas stuff and all red was quite striking, and we just with a lot of old players, And I wasn't thinking that's the Barcelona Bears that are playing there. This is legends, and I was just thinking we got a bunch of old guys, and Aberdeen got all these young guys that are dead exciting. And I hated them, absolutely hated them, but in a more kind of jealous way than anything else. And we won once, but it was Robert Pritz. The one time we got a modern kit with the pinstripes, that beautiful Rangers kit with the pinstripes. We went up to Pittodrie early on in the season again. It was been 82, 83, and Robert Pritz and Derek Johnson scored in the sunshine, and Rangers had won at Pittodrie. I listened to that live on the radio, I remember, on the Saturday afternoon. They said, won at Pittodrie. I'm saying, we're going to win the league. And he's like, yeah, I wouldn't get too excited about that. And we didn't, but Dundee United won the league that season, and Aberdeen were going for it in the last. They were up for winning the title in the last day of the season as well, as well Celtic. But we certainly stopped Aberdeen win the league, I suppose, by taking the points off them that day long term. But by the time I was going week in, week out, Robert Pritz was scoring at Pittodrie again. I think it was January 1985, and we were getting beat 5-1. Frank McDougall scoring 4 goals. Frank McDougall wearing the biggest crucifix any player has ever been able to wear. I think it was only slightly smaller than the one Jesus was actually pinned up on. Just letting us know, and no doubt, I am loving this. There's one other team in Scotland I would love to play for, but until I'm playing for them, I am loving this. 4 goals, I think, every single, even the ones he scored up at the, what was it, the paddock or whatever it was. He ran up to the beach end to celebrate them. So it was pretty dire, and I remember being on the bus, it was a supporters bus coming down the road with my uncle's mates and the Stevenson Masonic Supporters Club, and one of the guys was saying, we should just get somebody. We should just get a big name player. If we just get a big name player, even have him as player manager, the crowds, Ibrox would be absolutely jam packed. We can't go on like this. It was a really low moment. You wonder if we're ever going to come back. And I'd never really known Rangers winning the league at that point because I was just in my formative years. And I remember Jimmy Nicholl, he was talking about, I think it was Glenn Hoddle, he was saying, he was the man at the time, Glenn Hoddle, somebody like him. Imagine he brought him for Rangers. Just all the money we've got, just pile it into one decent kind of classy European style player, European standard star, and the place will be full. And I'm thinking, yeah, that sounds great, but it's never going to happen. The following season, it was Souness, who would have played keepy up. I don't think you could even have imagined that Graham Souness would ever come to Rangers, and that's exactly what happened. It all came true just a year later. So hang on there. Hang on, folks. Don't worry about how things are going just now. They've been a lot worse. But I could do with Rangers just, a wee win tomorrow night too. The one thing we never really did was go to Pittodrie when we were kind of starting and stammering, but just on the back wheel. And then Aberdeen, over the last 40 years, we got our revenge by Aberdeen not winning at Pittodrie, not winning at Ibrox for over a quarter of a century. But we would go up to Pittodrie in those days, and they would give us a hard time for a lot through the 90s. As late as 1992, 1993, Aberdeen were second. We won the treble, but Aberdeen were second in everything. We beat them in both cup finals and were second in the league. But we got our revenge kind of long term. But because it was my formative years, if Aberdeen do us tomorrow night, or tonight, sorry if you're watching this on Wednesday, it will just feel kind of normal. It's just something that's in my system, and I can't get rid of it. So I need Rangers to go there and do the business. And then I can just let the last 40 years kick in. Even when we were in the lower leagues, Aberdeen would go to Ibrox in the Scottish Cup semi-final against St Johnstone and get beat. That was great, but it was always like, that's another one back for what I went through when I was a young man. I've gone on too much about this, but I think my name's Alec Anderson. When I met you in the restaurant, you could tell I was no debutante. You asked me what's my pleasure, a movie or a measure. I'll have a cup of tea and hopefully victory at Pittodrie. I was watching a film, as I always do. I was watching a movie a couple of weeks ago, from 1995, but it's just come onto Prime, Amazon Prime, and was it Safe? It's called Safe. It's something that's starring Julianne Moore, Todd Haynes film, really good, really, really good. And because of the way it's shot and all that, and it's shot in parts of the county of Los Angeles, it looked a lot like Heat. There's a lot of kind of modernist buildings and that, so it looked a lot like a Michael Mann film. It was a kind of mix of Manhunter, Miami Vice, and Miami Vice the movie, and Miami Vice the TV series, and Heat, which is a film, it's an LA crime saga starring De Niro and Pacino. I mean, I've spoken about it before, I think, in one of these pods. But it was a great movie, and Julianne Moore was absolutely fantastic in it. I don't know if it's a breakout role for her, but it was really great. It was a kind of comment on the AIDS crisis, how that had been ignored in America and things like that. And she pitches it just perfect. You don't know if she's a hypochondriac or if she's a genuine victim, and it turns out it's a bit of both. But yeah, it's a great film. I would thoroughly advise you watching it. Safe. It's called it Safe. Starring Julianne Moore, and that's on Amazon Prime just now. But her co-star, if you like, the man playing her husband, was Xander Berkeley. Xander Berkeley, who I think he's been in, is it The Walking Dead, that series? I've never watched it. I think he's been in that lately, but I know him. Basically, he's a legend in my life because he's the only guy that was in both Heat, the great Michael Mann movie, and LA Takedown, the much lesser known TV movie version that Michael Mann directed. A kind of draft, a draft sketch, if you like, of the portrait that is Heat. He did this a TV movie version of Heat years earlier. It went under a few different names, but over here it's known as LA Takedown. And the only actor, man or woman, in both those films, both versions of Heat, is Xander Berkeley. He plays Waingro in the TV movie version, and in the movie version, in the Heat proper version, he just a bit part, and he plays Ralph. And Ralph's the guy who Vincent Hanna's wife, Justine Hanna, played by Diane Venora. Of course, Vincent Hanna played by Al Pacino. They're having a marriage. It's downslope of his marriage, his third marriage. He's working so hard all the time that she's getting sick of him not paying her any attention. So one night she basically says, "I'm going out. You're not coming with me. I'm going to basically get off with somebody else." And Al comes back from being out on a case, out on the case, chasing De Niro. He comes back to his house, and there's Ralph sitting, getting breakfast served to him. Justine's kind of rubbing it in his face. This guy slept here last night, and of course he sees Al Pacino as Al Pacino, and he's got the guns and all. He's Vincent Hanna. He's a hard-boiled detective, and Ralph kind of shits himself. He's the opposite of Waingro, who's a horrible murdering psychopath. So it's Ralph playing it. Xander Bartlett, it's really nice. He plays different guys, completely opposite characters, and I think as a comment is the whole bit about you do not get to watch my television, Ralph. He's no angry at him for sleeping with his wife because his wife wanted him to, but he's watching Al Pacino's portable television, which is the only thing he's got in that house because it's her ex-husband's house. It's a great scene. You do not get to watch my fucking television. But I think that's also a comment on the television version of Heat, or it's Michael Mann saying he's never going to go back to making Miami Vice or something because he takes the telly and he kicks it onto the road. Interesting stuff in Heat. But I'm watching this film the other week, and there's Xander Bartley, and he's playing the Julianne Moore character's wife. Her name's Carol. All the women in Todd Haynes films are called Carol. And she goes away to this retreat to try and get better. And she leaves him at home with his son, because it's his second marriage as well. And I'm thinking, one night he's in Los Angeles, which is where Heat is set as well. The Xander Bartley character in this Safe film. She's away at a retreat for 2-3 weeks. She won't only come back. She keeps pitting off when she's going to come back. He's all alone. He's getting lonely. Get somebody to babysit the Wayne. He probably goes into LA one night, to see what happens. And I'm thinking, that's obviously when he meets Justine Hanna. That's when he meets Diane Venora, and he goes back, and the kid's on his name's Ralph, and he goes back and he ends up having a one night affair. And that doesn't make any sense. It does actually make sense for Todd Haynes' film, because he does all that kind of meta stuff where it's different actors playing the same character through the film with Bob Dylan and what have you. But I think it's quite Todd Haynes would do that kind of thing. But I thought it's quite good. But it feels as if a lot of Rangers fans, they would make that connection a lot. It's a lot easier for them to think that Xander Bartley is the same guy, in Heat and Safe. The same guy is going to be Diane Venora's character for a one night, as well as going to be Julianne Moore's character, is married to Julianne Moore's character in another film. Then they can make the connection between us starting a bit slowly this season under Philippe Clement, who's getting rid of 16 players and only been able to bring in 11, while our stadium isn't even ready for us. They've been able to make that they can make the connection with Xander Bartley a lot easier. They can make the connection between that and Rangers starting slowly this season. This idea that if we go 9 points behind Aberdeen tonight, it's untenable for them. I still don't think we're at the point where we know that it's Philippe Clement's fault. I feel as if my instinct about Clement right now isn't necessarily that he's definitely the right man for the job. I don't think he's the wrong man for the job. I don't think he's proved that either. But I know that he is a good manager. I mean, he's won the Belgian title 3 times with 2 different clubs. You don't do that by accident. It's a decent league, the Belgian league, certainly equal to Scotland anyway. It's the rubrics and the parameters by which he's being criticised, and the kind of the tone and the just the hate, if you like, sometimes of the criticisms, behind the criticisms that have been thrown at him. I just don't think they stack up yet. And I actually at the point now where I don't necessarily know if we go up to Aberdeen, kind of Icarus-like as they are just now, and we try to be the sun that melts the wax that's holding their little temporary wings together, and we bring them crashing down to earth. But if we don't do that in Aberdeen, this is going to go one of two ways as far as I'm concerned. We're either going to be the last thing Aberdeen need. It's going to be a reversal of the usual scenario where we're doing quite well in the season. They're stumbling along, trying to finish in the top half, if not avoid relegation. And then Rangers come to town and suddenly we're the cup final and they're up for it. Well, they've been beating everybody else. I said they've even won their 6 League Cup games. It'll be lower league opposition a lot of times, but Aberdeen have beaten everybody they've played this season domestically except Celtic, and they had a fantastic draw against them, comeback draw. It might be a reversal of that. I'm hoping it's just going to mess with their chi. They're so unused to this situation, Aberdeen, where it's actually us can go up there and muck them up. We'll be the last team, the team they most want to beat. It could be the crowning moment, though. It could be the crowning moment of this. The way Jimmy Tellin has arrived as their manager, they could go out there and finally cap all this early season form with a 3-4 goal victory over Rangers. They could blow us away if all the things we think that are wrong with Rangers come to bear, or things we know are wrong with Rangers. We've seen us being slow and being bad defensively, how about this season. If that all comes to bear and Aberdeen just keep, busting a gut and playing all out attacking, line breaking football as they have been all season, they could completely blow us away. But I still don't know. So many, I think at least half the Rangers support will make up their mind that, yeah, that is it. Clement is done. But as we're hearing from James Taylor today and what have you, that he's touching on the problems that we're having, I don't know that it should mean that he's done. I don't necessarily mean that. This is not, for example, the situation we had 13 months ago where Aberdeen come to Ibrox and they beat us 3-1, and that is the end. And everybody's eyes, even a happy clapper like myself, it's like, that's it, he's done. We can see it's over. They no longer know how to play under Michael Beale. He's gone. If Aberdeen were to beat us 3-1 at Pittodrie tonight, it would be, I don't know, it's kind of expected. And if this Rangers team are still kind of gelling together, forming together, coming together, and we still need 2 or 3 transfer windows, I don't know that we can actually say we should get rid of Philippe Clement. I'm not saying it's going to be the same situation as, for example, when we get in the 60s getting rid of Scott Simon simply because Celtic had got Jock Stein, and we're like, we can't have that. We basically get rid of Scott Simon. I know we get put out the Scottish Cup by Berwick, but it was more the case we get rid of Scott Simon because Celtic had won the European Cup and they were about to become champions of the world if they beat Racing Club of Argentina in the old Intercontinental Cup that they were playing at the time of Scott Simon's sacking. And it took us, we had the 2 trebles, obviously, and I think 3 league titles altogether in the intervening 20 years, but it wasn't until Souness was in there and Lawrence Marlborough was in there putting the money in that we really come back to any kind of level of dominance that we'd experienced under Scott Simon. So I don't want us to be, we had to change the tracksuit manager and all that, there's more to it than that, but I don't want us to panic and get rid of Clement if we lose this game tonight. And even I think if we lose it heavily, I think Aberdeen beat Dundee United 1-0 at home on Saturday night with a goal 5 minutes from the end, and it's magical. They're phenomenal. They're tremendous. We beat Dundee United 1-0 at Tannadice with a goal barely 5 minutes into the game and just kind of, just played out the rest of the game without them threatening us at all, and that's just no good enough. Blah blah blah. I think our own standards are actually, as I say, we're playing like 5 European ties along the way as well, which Aberdeen don't have to concern themselves with. So I feel as if we might have actually kind of fooled ourselves into going right under the radar, perfectly camouflaging ourselves in time for going to Pittodrie tonight. I've got to admit, I'm enjoying this scenario. I shouldn't be. I'm enjoying this scenario just now because it's really early in the season, and it is early in the season. That's the other thing. This idea that because it's getting into November. I know the manager made a rod for his own back with his. You'll see my real. You'll see the team playing the way I want them to by October, November. But we went top of the league in, was it February into March last season, and still ended up by the end of it. It was everyone back then, they were never going to win that league. Rangers. It was a bit of a joke and what have you. So there's plenty of time for this season to play out, and I think I'm quite enjoying the fact that at this early point of the season we go up there with all the attention on Aberdeen and all the expectation on Aberdeen, and the fact that they absolutely hate us, and we've just, as I keep saying, we've reversed the usual situation. I want us to be the one tripping them up from a lowly position for a wee change, and it'd be interesting to see what happened to Aberdeen if they did lose to us tonight. I feel as if there's a lot of things to be said here. I don't want to bore you guys. I don't want to keep making. There's a lot of pods going out. I'm doing a lot of pods these days, and I don't want to keep making them over an hour long. I'm really pushing your patience, but yeah, I think the manager today was talking about the team. Let's talk about that. The manager was talking about the team today. Suter and Lawrence are back in the reckoning, and I think they'll be straight back in the team. Yanis Hadji no longer suspended, but again against Aberdeen at Pittodrie after his little tackle, assault, leg breaker in the St Johnstone game. I don't know if Yanis is, he's never been the fastest on his feet. He's fast of brain, but I think when the kind of atmosphere we're going to experience tomorrow night, I don't know if Yanis should be allowed back into that one. I can't see him starting this game at all. I think Suter will be back into the starting 11. The Robin Proper, terrible game on Sunday, had to get taken off. A bad moment for the fella. Not a lot of confidence in him just now. But I think I saw various people talking on Twitter in the interview in a few days about the fact he took a knock. He was on the bench the previous game, the European game against FCSB, so we shouldn't be too hard on him. And also, I think if you remember, a certain Philippe Clement, I think the last away game I went to watching Rangers, other than Hampden, was that League Cup quarter-final in 2019 against Livingston, where Lyndon Dykes was handing him his arse on a plate for most of the game. Big Clement, he was giving him absolute torture on the Livingston carpet. But we won the game, we stumbled through the game 1-0 in a Glenn Kamara goal. But at the end of the game, Stephen Gerrard, I thought it was a bad move at the time. He has got Hollander on the park, like schooling him on how to defend, in front of the whole crowd. And I thought that's a dodgy tactic. You could lose the guy forever with that. You're basically embarrassing him, humiliating him. But Philippe Hollander is one of the greatest central defenders I've ever seen playing for Rangers. The guy was an absolute monster. He just couldn't stay fit. He became fantastic. He just needed that moment of adjustment. And that would be, September time? That game was played. So here we have Robin Proper, who's had to fit into a kind of fluid situation at Rangers, not even knowing what stadium we're playing out of, and he's been maybe publicly humiliated by his manager taking him off at that point, but it was needed. He wasn't handling Olasanya at all on Sunday. It needed to be done. It was a good move by the manager. It was the right move to be made. But we shouldn't be writing the guy off, but I think it's going to be Suter. And I would say Suter and Balogun. But Casemiro is perhaps the problem with Casemiro. He's on the right hand side, which Suter always prefers to play there as well. But Casemiro did well on Sunday when he get moved into centre half. Of course, I hate him. I absolutely hate Casemiro because he's, I'm a Tav fundamentalist. So he's threatening Tav's position as far as I'm concerned. So I absolutely hate him. And that was reflected in my post-match reaction pod where I said he's really good defensively, but he's no good getting forward and supporting Czerny the way he needs to be supported, the way Tav supports Czerny. And I go back and after I did that pod, I watched the sports scene highlights, and they talked about how well Casemiro did when he was going forward. And the fact he'd hit the bar as well. I completely forgot he'd hit the bar because I didn't want to see it because I love Tav so much and I can't have any other right backs coming into the team. But he did do well going forward, but when he went into centre half, that was it. Threat over. He handled Olasanya, so it's a physical game, and I wouldn't have too many fears. It's only his youth and maybe what he's got. Playing Dutch football though, I know he was getting farmed out to Austria and what have you, but he'll have experienced pretty physical games in tight stadiums, and I feel that's how Rangers should regard this tomorrow. I think it's going to be Balogun that starts the game, but I wouldn't have any fears if it was Casemiro coming in this place, and it'll definitely be John Souttar. As far as I'm concerned, I think the whole thing about the medical team told him he was in the red zone and all that. I think that was just a way of resting him against St Mirren without disrespecting St Mirren to the point where they, it gave them more inspiration on Sunday. I think it was bogus as far as I'm concerned. He has played a lot of games this season, Souttar, for a man who's been so injured so often. But I feel we've got to look at this as a European game. It's another thing that's gone under the radar is the fact that Philippe Clement hasn't lost an away game. He's played 5 European away games for Rangers, hasn't lost any of them, won some of them, and it's a draw against Sparta Prague in Prague. No dead rubber. They're trying to beat us. Group stage. Backs to the wall stuff at times. That's an amazing performance. His first European away game in charge of Rangers. We win in Seville against Real Betis. A historic result for us. Fantastic football we played on the night. We draw with Benfica, go toe-to-toe with them, 2-2, toe-to-toe. It was an epic in one of the great arenas of world football. We draw with Dynamo Kiev in Poland, of course. We go out, of course, as we did to Benfica, but we draw 1 each over there in Poland against them. A late equaliser, played well on the night, and then we beat the champions of Sweden. The first time we've ever beaten Swedish opposition in any game, even any one match in European competition, and we go to Malmo and we beat Malmo on their home patch. And I think we should look at this as a European game. You've got that. I'm talking about Robert Pritz, Malmo, Malmo's Robert Pritz, Rangers Robert Pritz. There is that Malmo connection, that Swedish connection. Tellin is Swedish. He's one of these kind of football guru types that stopped playing in his mid-20s, lower league, and has just learned management in the way up. And he was the Elfsborg manager when they lost the league. Was it by a goal? Was it goal difference or was it by a point? Very, very close anyway, last season. The season before this, they lost to Allsvenskan. They finished second to Malmo, super tight second to Malmo. And that's obviously what he's, well, just now he looks like he's going to finish he is a super tight second to Celtic. Celtic only had him in goal difference right now. But that should encourage Rangers, because you think Pittodrie is quite like that whole kind of Malmo thing, isn't it? The kind of tight stadium, capacity just over 20,000 odd, tight on the park. A name known throughout Europe, Aberdeen. So I feel as if we should go up there and treat it like that. And the big man should treat it like, as far as I'm coming from Ardrossan, Aberdeen's like going to Norway anyway. It's totally Scandinavian. So we should tap into the European away vibe, I think, tomorrow. I think our manager and perhaps our players are going to enjoy this. The team I would go with, as I say, I think it's going to be Balogun and Souttar at centre half, which I would go with. I'll go with what I would go with, and I think it's going to coincide with what the manager goes with. Obviously, Hefty stays at left back because Yilmaz isn't fit yet. And that's another thing. We get Yilmaz, Matondo, Danilo, Cortez. They've all still to come back from injury, and even if only 2 of them stay back from it and actually remain fit for the rest of the season, that's players we've still got to come back in just now. So I would have Hefty at left back, Tav the captain's coming in at right back because he's going to score a hat trick tomorrow night. 1 penalty, 2 free kicks. I don't know if it's going to be 3-0 to us. We're going to get beat 4-3, but Tav's getting a hat trick tomorrow night. The sitting 2 in midfield should be Barron and Raskin, who've been tremendous recently. Nico Raskin particularly coming back with a bang. On the left-hand side, it's got to be Bajrami, who, by the sounds of things today, actually prefers to play it on the left-hand side. If I was hearing him correctly in that press conference he did today, Tuesday. On the right-hand side, it's got to be Cherny, who's flying. The manager quite right to point out that he was the worst player in the world a few weeks ago, Cherny, and now he's got 25 goals in 3 games. I think it's going to be Lawrence. I think Lawrence is going to come back and start at 10. And this means Diamandi going to the bench probably, and it's got to be Big Cyril. It's got to be Big Cyril up front, who has been in the wars and had, it's been interesting. It's been emotional, as an awful, terrible footballer once said. But it has been, so I mean another, as in Cyril Dessers is a terrible footballer. I mean, Vinnie Jones is a wank. But he's said the line, it's been emotional in that film by Madonna's former husband, who's a wank as well. But anyway, Cyril Dessers, I love Big Cyril. He's not reliable, not totally reliable in a way we want him to be, but he's you trust him to put the effort in anyway, and we saw from him on Sunday. He recovered from his little trauma, which was, I didn't realise. I'd completely forgotten. It was only when I watched the game back against FCSB that he'd been fouled, smacked in the face, smacked in the eyes before the foul he got to the face in the build-up to our third goal. Cherny making it 3-0 against FCSB. So when you see stuff like that and he's got no help from the referee at all, who did help us when it came to the Jack Butland letting FCSB open the scoring, so to speak. But you can see why Big Cyril was seriously upset with everything that had happened there and ends up walking off the park. Unacceptable as that is. But he comes back in fine form, the best possible way on Sunday by driving and then setting up that the winning goal in the game. So I'd be quite happy. I'm quite happy with Cyril. He's got to start. He's the man. He's got to start as far as I'm concerned. The only thing I would say is, knowing a combination of knowing that the one and only Philippe Clement doesn't always do what we expect him to do, and knowing what it's like against Aberdeen at Pittodrie, I don't know. I feel as if either Barron or Raskin are either going to get sent off or are going to get dropped. I don't know. The manager talking up Conor Barron, how he's super mature, and even though he played for Aberdeen, blah, blah, blah. Shinnie's in there. Shinnie is in there being an absolute tosspot, doing what he does, Mr. Streetwise. He's just a rabid cheat, but he gets in there and he's a great old pro. We have to give him that, and he'll get in about young Conor Barron and be trying to get the boy sent off. Same as with Nico Raskin. They are both young guys. The only problem is if you drop one of them, you're bringing in Diamande, who's just as young and just as liable. He likes a wee swing at folk, does Dio, when things start going wrong. So I don't know, but I think you have to go with it. I think just the way the team is just now, you have to go with Barron and Raskin, because the two of them have been playing excellently, and just hope Rangers can go out there and make their mark on the game. Is that enough? Is that enough from me? I would just say, I might as well throw in another metaphor or whatever. We get Gareth Southgate and Eric Ten Hag waiting in the wings if Philippe Clement slips up. I don't think it's a kind of. But we're stuck just now in the attitude towards this game. Half the Rangers support are saying and emphasising finishing third is totally untenable for Rangers. That's just that the manager has to go. The manager has to. I don't think it's completely his fault the situation we're in just now. And the other half of the support is kind of saying, well, he's not going to go. He's not going to go. There's no way we're sacking. We can't afford to sack him. We don't even have anybody to sack him. The board is in such a state. You saw the banner going up in the Copeland on Sunday there about fans needing to take action, and just been a bit of a shambles in the boardroom. The one thing I would say to the Union Bears, can you just get somebody to turn it? If somebody. When you put the banners up, now that I'm I'm at the Copeland end, I'm up towards the Copeland line with the 6-yard box at the Copeland end of the main stand. I couldn't see it right. I could only see bits of it. It was too square on. So if you maybe want to just remember the people that are kind of behind you, and just if you can turn the banners round briefly and just show them to the other three sides of the stage, because it's just all guys running about me going, what does it say? What does it say? Doing their neck in, trying to crane round and see it. So I didn't know what to applaud on, I didn't know what the message was. It might be happy birthday to such and such. I didn't know, so just going to kind of move the banners around and let the rest of us see them. But a lot of people are saying that even if we get destroyed by Aberdeen, there's nobody there to sack Clement, so he's there. He's got to be there whether we like it or not. It would make a hell of a difference to the atmosphere. The ability to complete this project that Philippe Clement's talking about, of a complete rebuilding of the team, which we wanted and which is needed and which he's clearly trying to do just now. I think he's there because he was sold short in his transfer funds for the summer. Didn't get the targets he was looking for, even just in this first phase of his rebuild. I think that this is just my kind of barroom talking off the top of my head, talking crap, absolutely no substance to this whatsoever, but I just feel as if that's maybe a reason that he was given that year's contract extension before he's really done anything, which just is saying, I will see this through, I will take the flak, but you've sold me short here. You've never, we need to do something to improve a sense of stability in the club, and even if it is just the manager not going anywhere, that'll do for me just now. We need someone to pin a rebuild around. And he's short of materials, basically. It's the same as the Copeland Road stand. He wasn't given the materials he was supposed to get on time, and it was embarrassing, and it didn't show the club in a very good light. It was far from perfect, but we got there in the end, quite shortly thereafter, and it was well worth it looking at that Copeland Road stand just now. It was a job that had to be done for the sake of the club, for the sake of the wheelchair supporters, I'm really, really proud that we got that job. It's something that had gone on too long. And to have our wheelchair supporters up there in the Copelands, quite frankly, as far as I'm concerned, it's a bit too luxurious. Just a wee, maybe treat the rest as, I mean, I think the jacuzzi's in there, and the wee minibar and stuff like that. It's out of order, but it looks great, and I'm really proud of it. It's really worth it. It's the same with the team. It's going to be for 2012. It's going to take a couple of decades probably all in, so we're heading for 2032 before that starts. It'll be 2032 if we haven't retained the league title or something like that by that point. Then I'll start with burning my season ticket or melting it down with the plastic at that point. I think it's just like the Copeland Road stand. That's my wee metaphor analogy for ending this particular pod. It's not going particularly brilliantly just now, and even if it's a wee bit of embarrassment tomorrow night, a wee bit of embarrassment like having to play at Hampden and what have you, we'll get there in the end, and it's going to be well worth it. We just need to make sure we stick to the plan, and the plan right now is Philippe Clement. But I think the plan would go a lot better if we got there and scud this mob by 3 or 4 goals and shut them up. Right, folks, enjoy the game, and I'll talk to you a lot more briefly after full time at Pittodrie. Cheers.